We'll get started. I have an agenda for you, and it's just, I thought that would be basically the framework of what our discussions would be tonight. And then to start off, we'll just review the norms that we looked at our first meeting. Just asked that one person speaks at a time, identifies the issues and what's important to him or her, discuss as well what he or she views as problems, demonstrate respect for one another or mutual understanding of issues, enter discussion with an open mind, demonstrate growth mindset. Each person should also be prepared with some ideas for solutions to the problem. Share the airspace. Each person has the right to be heard completely. Try hard to understand the position of others by listening to what they are saying. Keep personal feelings and biases out of the discussions, and then be prepared to explain the other person's point of view if you're asked to do so. So I've identified a number two from what I gather from representing all three boards. I think I got a good understanding of what each board's concerns are and what what they feel is the most important things that need to be discussed. If there's anything I'm missing, please let me know and we can add it. But first thing I have is the formation of a 7 to 12 RSU. And in that discussion, the one person, one vote rule, community representation, and then retaining local SAU control of K6 is what I hear collectively from the three boards. So just for the purpose of getting started, we all now know that the formation of an RSU is not optional for us. It's something that the department is telling us we have to do, and that's because in statute right now, a regional service center or an education service center cannot govern a school. You can own one, but you can't do anything with it once you own it. So that's problematic. For some of our member SAUs, it's going to be extremely important that the RSU board has the one person, one vote rule, and that's actually in the RSU statutes. That's not optional. So that's actually something that has to occur when you meet to start discussing the formation of that RSU. You can't lopside representation one way or the other, and you can't go in and say, let's just do an even split of it. It has to be representative of the communities that you serve, not the districts. So it's not representation from MS80 27, MS80 33, and Madawaska School Department. It's representation by all the member communities that are coming to the table to form that RSU. And that's how that goes. So is everyone clear on the one person, one vote? That also ties into community representation. It's important to the boards that the communities are represented, and as I just said, that has to be part of the process. So there has to be representation for St. John Plantation, because St. John Plantation is a member community of one of our districts. Also has to be representative of Frenchville. It also has to be representative of Madawaska, St. Agatha, Fort Kent, and Wallagrass. And you can, if you so choose to invite other member communities that are not currently part of our districts. So there are people who ask questions about, what about Grand Isle? Grand Isle is a tuitioning community. They are not part of Valley Unified. If they would want to be part of the RSU, that's something that can be entertained now or later. I've explained to the boards that it's probably cleaner to start with what you have right now and then invite other entities afterwards, but that's not my choice. That's just me speaking from what's already very difficult to manage, and adding other players to the table might make that even more challenging. The same thing can be said for Allagash. The same thing can be said for Eagle Lake, Winterville, or whomever. You can invite Caribou if you want, and then if Caribou wants to join this RSU, that's something that can happen. And then the retention of local SAU control is something that is in our strategic plan. In our planning, we did say that communities should keep an elementary school in each district. And I know it's nobody's intent around this table or any of the boards to close down elementary schools. The local SAUs really feel that the only way that they can go into this wholeheartedly is if the local control of their elementary school is not under the governance of the RSU. I've gone back and forth with the department about, can you do subgroups of the RSU to govern? And there's nothing clear in statute that allows that. Nothing clear in statute that doesn't allow it, but as we see with other past precedent, if it's not written in statute, it's probably going to be a no. I would love to have only one board to have to deal with, but it doesn't appear that that's going to be possible right now. The keeping the local control of the K to 6 is very important. Right now, under RSU law, it doesn't specify 7 through 12. So we had to ask our local legislators to submit a bill, which Senator Jackson has done on our behalf, to change the lane or to modify the RSU language to allow for specific grade levels to be formed. That language was sponsored by the Department of Education. It's not something that I wrote. The department, wrote a draft of that language, and we sent it to Senator Jackson, and he's submitted that bill, or has planned to submit it. I think that you can only submit bills after the election or something. There's some rules with that, but it is in the works to be submitted for consideration. So, do we want to have any discussion, negotiation around the formation of the RSU? Is that one that's pretty clear and cut?
So our deadline for this is the 31st of December.
And I asked again yesterday for a written deadline. We got a response, Giselle and I, yesterday afternoon from Joanne Allen, who did apologize. She's working on it and plans to give it to us. But yes, the commissioner has confirmed in an email that I sent to her that the end of this calendar year is our deadline.
So if Senator Jackson can't submit the bill until after the election, that doesn't give much time for that.
Senator Jackson has told me he submitted it, but I think it's
Well, nothing can happen until after the election.
I don't know that there's going to be a legislative session
Okay.
for quite a while, but the fact that that bill has been submitted means that the process has already started.
Okay.
So on the issue of, somebody asked this question to me and I don't know the answer. We have, let's just take SAD 27, because that's my name. If we have a board of directors that's managing pre-K through 6, and then we have the regional RSU that's bigger, that's handling 7 through 12.
Yep.
Are we doing 2 budgets?
Yes.
You will have 2 referenda.
Yep. Your SAD 27 budget will be just like it is now, but just for pre-K to 6. And then your budget for Valley Unified will be a referendum amongst all member communities.
So in Fort Kent proper, when I go to the poll, I'll be voting for 2 budgets.
Correct.
Is the RSC under this, ESC, still going to be submitting budgets under this plan?
Yes. But my proposal is that your Valley Unified Board becomes your Valley Unified RSU Board becomes your Valley Unified Board. And that board will have to approve 2 budgets, but your ESC budget will be very minimal, just your shared services. This would work better if I had it drawn for the flow chart. That would be very easy.
And then the tally for that is region-wide. For the RSU, it would be general population, majority rules, and then the, like I said, 27, each individual SAU would be their SAU communities.
Yep. The approval of an RSU can only be done by the local voters. So what our vision is for this would be if Valley Unified Regional School is allowed to continue, that referendum vote for that school would also have a separate referendum for the formation of Valley Unified. So essentially your voters are voting to approve a school and voting to approve a governance for that school at the same time. You don't want one to happen before the other because you don't want a school that you can't govern, and you don't want to govern nothing if you don't have the school. So having a parallel track for that would be the cleanest way. The only danger is if one passes and the other one fails, then we'd have to have some language into, both of these have to be approved. There's got to be some legal language that can be put in to protect so that we, don't form an RSU and now we don't have a school, because that's been voted down.
If I could then, under the number 2, the identification of issues, the formation of the RSU. I haven't been here part of the process for that long, but at some point, whether that's when we go back to our individual boards or we can do it tonight or whatever, I would like to know, and maybe others would like to know too, and we have newer members on our board. What's the structure that's there now? And what are we looking to change it to? Because I want to make sure that I'm clear on what's going down, what's happening.
As far as the RSU language change, yeah. And I've given that, I think it was before you, I've done, the then and now with the strike through, I can get you that.
That'd be
We
great.
can revisit that.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank
It's
you.
minimal changes. It literally just, changes that the K to 12 RSU and strikes that out and says, any grade level RSU, and with some other minimal changes.
Rick, as far as also like how the community representation and the one person, one vote.
Yeah.
What are we at today? And with these new things coming into play, what's going to be the change?
So the ILA to become different.
So those are two different things, because there's nothing today. There's nothing today. Right now we don't have an RSU, so that's going to be a whole new thing altogether. I think what you're alluding to is
Probably prior to not the RSU, what we currently have now.
for Valley Unified.
Thank
Yeah,
you. Yes, that's what I meant.
yeah, that's going to be the last one, the item C.
Okay,
We're going to talk about that.
thank you.
Right now, we're just RSU.
So logistically on the RSU, aren't we going back to the drawing board currently? Because the RSC lacks the legal standing to build a school?
No, actually the RSC can build a school. We can bond for it, we can do all those things.
But the statute says it has to be a school unit, and the RSC is not a school unit.
To govern, only to govern.
But on the building statute as well, it limits, the language is limited to a school unit for building. So I'm just worried we put a whole bunch of effort into this again.
Yep.
And then discover, oops, we can't do anything. Because the statute, John Grove pointed it out in our last meeting. The statute on new school construction, it's clear that it's a school unit that needs to construct a school and go through jump through all the hoops. And that's the same kind of, what got us in trouble in managing the school, is that it says a school unit must manage the school. It's also a school unit must build the school. So have we figured out, like, where does that put us? Because up to date, it hasn't been a school unit, it's been an educational service center.
Yeah, and we were awarded a school as an education service center, so I think had this been a concern, it would be on the DOE's radar. They've awarded it to us. They've allowed us to do site selection. You know, they're willing to allow us to concept design it. So I can follow up, Toby, you know, where it says that and what the thought is, but my guess would be that the regional service centers law is a loophole in that, and I don't know.
Yeah, the whole thing was on the legislative level seems a little half-baked because there's contradictory statutes. That's always a problem. And I seem to recall the commissioner not being terribly excited at this doing the thing at the same time idea. Like I remember she was very skeptical of that notion. So has she had to change a part around that? Because I remember Scott Brown, I think, brought it up, this idea of both things at the same time or run them parallel.
Mhm.
And I think you and Scott Brown have put that forward. And I remember the commissioner not being kind of cold to that. I mean, are we sure that that's something they're going to permit? She wasn't excited about it.
Well, the last conversation we had was when we went, and that's how we discussed it and didn't get a sense of that was a concern. Because I did share, you know, we don't want to have a school that we can't govern, and we don't want to govern no school. So we have to have both.
Well, let's just make sure that.
Yeah, I will. Parallel. So, I guess, do we feel that our school boards are going to be fine with the formation of an RSU in order to move forward? Are they going to be fine that that's going to be a one person, one vote board with community representation, and that we're going to work to retain local control of pre-K to 6? Is that something you think that your boards will be comfortable with? And I know you're just representing, but for the sake of what we're taking back to our boards, I think you've worked with your boards long enough to know that this is what we've been talking about, and this is the way we see it.
We discussed it, we were all on the same page. That's 33 years.
Yep.
I think SED 27 was feeling that they would like to extend an invitation to the tuition community in the formation.
What are your thoughts about that, Madawaska and 33, reaching out to our tuitioning, exclusively to our tuitioning communities? Like, I'm not gonna put an RFP out for like.
See if Callis wants to come.
So,
Wrong.
you mentioned that a while ago. What's the difficulty in extending an invitation now and then creating an RSU, or waiting and then extending the invitation? You said something along the line, it's easier to.
Just in my mind, you know, we have 3 boards represented here. If we were to invite the other 3, 4, now we would have 7 at the table. So, I was just thinking.
Can I ask a clarification? Were you referring to the process of developing the RSU? To invite the tuitioning
Yes.
communities for the development of the RSU?
Yeah.
Well, I think SAT 33 has mentioned before that we would be okay. At our last meeting, we mentioned that to, you know, invite the other communities, the tuition communities. If the process goes smoother to invite afterwards, I mean, I guess we don't really have any extra communities to invite, but for us, I think whatever is gonna make the process go smoothly. Because the ultimate goal is to get school up and,
And just bear in mind that those other communities cannot hop into your school project because that was awarded to 3
Mhm.
districts. It wasn't awarded to 7 districts. So in a parallel structure, you can do this RSU thing with all the partners, and that's fine as long as you understand that the school is between the 3 of you.
So then it wouldn't make sense to invite before.
at the moment, yeah.
It may in the planning of, and I don't know what 27's,
Well, what would that mean after if the RSU board becomes the Valley Unified Board?
right.
Seems like that would be a hiccup.
Yep.
But, may I say?
Yeah.
If you were to keep whatever structure the Valley Unified is now and proceed to developing the RSU with your current communities, you could make that plan with the forethought of, this is what it's going to be when the other communities join. So you're inviting them, but you're actually creating the format that it will run in. So I'm just thinking of having X number of communities just makes it hard, right?
There was language in the ILA, and I haven't read it in a while.
Yep.
About inviting other
Yep.
communities.
New members or associate members.
I have a hard time picturing in my head what the difference is and all the little, what it ends up meaning.
Yeah, if you're a member like the 3 of us are, you agree to purchase the services that the ESC provides. So any new member we invite, they would have to agree that they're purchasing a superintendent service, they're purchasing, a director of finance service, or food service, whatever. And some of them might be moot because they might be communities that don't operate a school, so they don't need a food service director. The associate membership is more specific to bits and pieces, and it kind of outlines like municipalities joining as associate members. So if they wanted to hop on, fuel bids with us and that type of thing, you could have associate members that don't have the full scope. They just have parts of the.
So essentially, they're on the back burner for a lot of this.
But there's a provision already to allow the tuition schools, if they, tuition communities, if they wish to come on board, with it, serve out, educational services out there, right?
Yes.
So, I want to call it.
And I have received from one community, MSC 10, maybe a year ago, an inquiry. But it was somebody who was just a resident, was planning on running for the school board, and I think was just doing some homework, and said that, there was talk in the community of approaching us to look at, whether or not they could join in to the education service center for some of those services.
Which one's
Okay. But nothing ever materialized after.
I think we're just changing everything as we go. It's gonna be hard to sell this in voters if we keep on changing things. And personally, my gut feeling is to stay with 3 until, but then I can understand what you're saying too. I'm scared that we're gonna lose credibility with the public, but all of it's changing. I think you had said it last week, we're starting playing baseball, now we're playing football. Seems like we're always changing something. And the public is having a hard time with the rest, but perception anyways is what they're having a hard time with. We might understand what's going on, but I guess maybe we'll do a good job explaining it to them.
But I think we also didn't know a whole heck of a lot starting. We know a whole lot more now than we did even 6 months ago. So it makes sense to adapt as new information. And maybe they need to do a better job communicating.
Yeah, I think bringing in our partner communities, I think, consider an important part of where we're coming from. I know some of our board members have spoken to some of their board members, and there's conversations. They don't know where they want to pop in, but I get the sense that they may be interested in participating. I think it's something for, I know it's something for SAU 27. This was one of the things that we walked out of our last board meeting saying we wanted to talk. It's one of the things that's really important to us. We've been partners with Eagle Lake, Centerville, and all that for decades. In fact, they're part of our board and relatively recent. Not having a challenge. So. And I think Holden changed their structure to something, and that didn't bother me.
They're done now, so
Yeah, but before it fell apart,
Yeah, I'm
I
not
added
sure.
something.
I'm not sure if they,
As far as, I don't want to speak for Tangent, our chairman, but as far as, the common community, as far as tuition towns or whatever coming in, I don't know that we'd have, we'd like to know what that would entail. I don't think we're for or against it. Just what does that do if we allow them? Again, coming back to my earlier question, we've got something set up now. If whatever we change, we just all need to know what it's changing to, and are we okay with that or not? So as long as, but for me, I'm not going to say I'm for one way or another now. Out of those three things in 2A, I definitely think the third bullet, the retaining of the local SAU control K through 6. I think our board is pretty much right on that. I don't think we want to have any changes there. But as far as 1 and 2, until we know what it is that we're talking about and what changes are going to be there, I can only speak for myself, but I don't think I'm ready to approve or disapprove. I don't know the vote.
And I think at our last board meeting, the thought process was basically to stay with the communities that we have now. Now, if we're pulling in all the tuition to them, I think we just need to go back to our board and get a feeling like what they feel. I mean, yes, we're representing the board, but our discussion was all based around the team players that we had at that point. Now it seems like we're adding more team players. So, I mean, I can sit here and give you my personal opinion, but that's not necessarily what my board may feel. So I think it's something, I mean, I know it's back and forth, but these are big changes and we gotta make sure that we dot our i's and cross our t's.
But the 20 towns, when others are invited, they cannot make the decisions with us, correct? Is that what you were saying? They're not a part of the decision-making.
they're not going to be part of Valley Unified Education Service Center unless they petition to do so, and then the board has to approve new members. So anything dealing with the school, they would not be part of the decisions about that school, because that school is awarded to the Valley.
The word is three of us for Valley.
We applied as separate entities, as 3 separate boards.
So SAU 33, SAU 27, and adolescent schools are the recipients, not Valley.
In the application, yes, it was the 3 schools that were awarded the project. Because you had to be 3 districts or more to get awarded this project. So we applied as 3 districts.
But it's not the 3 district entities, Valley.
And that's because of the ILA that was formed.
Okay. So if we choose, if Valley Unified chooses to make changes, there's nothing to stop.
Yeah, right. Yeah, if something changes to the ILA or, yeah.
When we asked the commissioner directly, what if other communities join us now? Her response was, the grant was given to the 3 SAUs. The other schools that were invited would not matter or make a difference. Pretty much what was asked.
And to our point was, what if somebody joins and then somebody leaves? And she said, the 3 core cannot leave. If one of the 3 core leaves, then it's no. You know, so we couldn't invite Grand Isle and then, you know.
Well, Grand Isle will get.
Right. Yeah.
But that's not exactly the same. I mean, that's a little different than that. You can't swap members out.
Yeah, you have the ability, or Valley Unified has the ability to accept new members at any time. So are we good on this one? I think we're all at a common understanding?
Well, I think the one issue, I think, is there's 4 things. There's one person went vote, Sarah spoke, that's New Year's education. Retaining control, safety, security, has questions about how. But there was an overarching question about doing the RSU. I don't think SAD 27, unless we deal with the other stuff, is there. I think that's our position. That there's a whole other, we're not saying yes.
Right.
We're saying
It's a package deal.
it's a package deal.
Yeah. Yep. I think it is for everyone.
I just want to be clear.
I'm gonna move on to site selection. We have straw poll results, and we all know what the results were. Overwhelming approval in 2 of the SAUs, 1 a dead even split. And what that all means, SAU 27 has had to grapple with what this means as a district, because they're hearing it from both sides, and a tie essentially is not approval. However, when you go back to the department, and speaking with Scott Brown, you know, he's voiced that, you know, this is not uncommon for straw polls to have very close or even an unfavorable result, and projects do continue, because straw polls are just a pulse of what, you know, what the community is thinking, and it's just one step before the second step, and those 2 steps together, site selection, concept design, go to the voters for that ultimate approval at referendum. So that's, you know, that's on the table, you know, what those results mean. And then there's been some conversation about should site selection be revisited based on some thoughts and feelings about, you know, how things have gone. We all know what that process was like. Some of us remember it very well and wish we didn't. But it was, we always knew this was going to be the most challenging step in this whole process, was identifying that site. And then I do have to tell you, and I think I told all 3 boards, that when we did meet with the commissioner, Giselle and I, you know, she was very clear that FEDA's funds for engineering are not plentiful. They're looking at the department right now at cuts everywhere. We haven't even been given a guarantee that the remaining funds we have for engineering are still available, which is concerning. I'm hoping that the department does not touch those funds. But I know that we do not have enough funds in FEDA's, even if we're allowed to do it, to revisit site selection and then do pull-off concept design. That budget was created by the department based on other projects, so they have a good idea about, you know, what the entire picture is going to cost. So I don't know how to start this conversation, but I thought that I put all that out so that you can start.
I'll start, because I remember it very well. The SAD 27 board struggles with the results and kind of like 3 or 4 tiers of why. One is the tie, a tie, and no place is a tie and affirmative vote. I remember several meetings of discussions of how we were going to tally the vote and what the vote meant. I didn't bring it with me, but there was something A, B, or C, and if one of the districts was a negative vote, the thing that you're voting on is dead. And so, we talked about some of the changes, some of the change in story, I guess, was that if there's a no vote, the project dies, or if there's a no vote, you might be able to go. And it seems like that's been changing, and that's kind of, we keep talking about things changing and struggling with it. One of the reasons that the tie is so disconcerting for us is because we had a different prompt than the other 2 districts. For example, Madawaska, the straw poll that you're about to vote on reads, are you in favor of the Frenchville 3A, 3B site as the location for the Village Valley Unified Regional School? In Fort Kent, it reads, I will restate very simply, a yes vote indicates that you agree to the site selection and wish the Department of Education to allow Valley Unified to continue its studies into the viability of a project so that we can be back here to vote a second time after concept and dollar figures are in front of you. A no vote indicates that you do not agree to the site selection and that the Department of Education will determine whether or not the viability of this consolidation will or will not continue. Throughout the evening, it was said several times, a no vote will likely kill the project. So you had 800 and something people in that building hearing. A no vote means you'll probably lose it. So what we're afraid of is that some of those 419 yays didn't approve the site, they just didn't want to lose the project. So that straw poll is likely not indicative of how they actually feel about the site. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to get into the rehashed feeling thoughts on the process and, faulty information or how we got to the decision. Did we read some old emails in the days just after, and I think there was a lot of conversation between the site selection committee even saying, can we submit both sites to the Valley Unified Board and let them say, I think it wasn't as clear as we keep hearing an overwhelming majority of Valley Unified residents vote in favor of the site. And I don't know that that's a clear picture, and I guess that's 27 issue.
And I think what it comes down to, feel like we were told 5 different things. And we were just asked to accept every step of the way in the last one. And we are the permutation of what we're going to do. Sarah talked about it a little bit, but originally we had a meeting here on campus here. affirmative vote for all 3 units for this project. We're talking about site selection. And yes, so that's fine. Then in the lead up to the vote, the signs went around. Okay, you guys probably didn't get it. You vote no, we'll never know. Suggesting, and there was a lot of stuff on it. Vote no. Project dead. Then the one. Nothing was ever said to correct that. Right? That was not true, but nothing was ever said to correct. Then we went to straw poll. What Lord Susie said, and he said it was the Department of Education going to make this decision. If you vote yes, if they decide to kill this, if they vote no, or if you vote yes and forward, no, in this case, third, the Department of Education. And then we met here to go over the poll results, and it was the Board of Education that was going to make the decision. That's what we were discussing. That the Board of Education will ultimately make the decision about how to vote. And then a group of us met with the commissioner, and she said that it's the local community's decision as to whether or not the process will vote.
Who was the group that had the commission? Why wasn't the other districts invited?
We asked about. This was a while. We talked about this a long time. So we talked about this last time. I think. We got down to questions about this because of the moving target. Okay, we started out one target, another target, another target. And we wanted to know because the Board of Education was going to make this. And the commissioner said it wasn't Board of Education. It was ultimately up to the local voters, the local sheriff, local community, local control. And our board took that to mean that we're a local board. We're the local control for our board. We have city 27 of our board. And if we had a vote in our meeting to say that it was effectively a rejection. With all things being equal, but the issue here, underlying all this, is that we went from something we all thought we understood, we agreed, and that's, I think, where the board is struggling.
So I think at that meeting, she actually offered to come up and sit down with all the boards.
Yeah, I think we're still trying to get them to come out, right?
The sequence of events, I think we went to March, early March. In February, the commissioner offered to come up to Presque Isle to meet all boards, all 3 boards. SAD 27 refused. You opted to go and meet with the commissioner. Then COVID struck and so forth, and then at the time was trying to schedule the commissioner to come out to meet with all 3 boards. And she's still willing to come out to meet. From our last meeting with her, she said she's willing to come out. It's just that COVID struck and she couldn't schedule it.
Wasn't there a change of commissioner through this whole process as well?
No, it was before we started.
It was before.
This is the document that Sarah was referring to, where we had to decide as separate boards which of these options to approve in order to gain ultimate approval for the project. One was the separate votes in each school unit, which is ultimately what we decided to go with. The other one was a majority rules, we're all lumped together. And then the third option was the town majority. We chose option 1. But if you notice that, and I know in listening to Sarah and Toby go back over that process, there was a lot of insinuations about negative straw polls and what that means and those ending the project. But in this document, you see that the only reference to the project dying is at the voter approval requirement, which is your referendum vote. This is where we said, if a community votes this down at the polls, the project is done. So I think there was a lot of crossing over that information, and you're right, people said things, and if you, and I do remember, moderators taking their own spin to what you were voting on. I agree, it's problematic, but I think, and I'd have to go back and watch videos. I think we were clear that straw polls were not binding. I thought we tried very hard to make it understand